I'm Flavia Deliane Zimmerman from the Australian Institute of International Affairs, and today I'm delighted to have with us Dr. Sue Boyd. Dr. Sue Boyd is a former member of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and a fellow for the Australian Institute of International Affairs. And today we are going to be discussing the topic of her talk, Not Always Diplomatic. Thank you for being with us, Sue.
Pleasure.
Sue, can you please explain to us why did you decide to write your book? Because the topic of your discussion today is around the themes raised in your book.
Well, I had a career of 34 years in the Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. I was posted in a lot of posts overseas, in most of the continents. I had a very wide experience, and then I retired and came back to Perth. And when I came back here, I found a lot of students of international affairs and their parents all wanted to know questions about the Foreign Service. They wanted to know how you get in, what the Foreign Service is looking for, then what's it like being at a Foreign Affairs post, what it's like being abroad, who are the sort of people you meet, what sort of life can you have, and as a woman, how did I find it? And so I answered so many of those questions, and I gave a lot of talks. And then I thought, well, I think the easiest thing is really to put it all in a book. So that's what this book is about. It's at the moment called Not Always Diplomatic. That doesn't mean to say what it's going to be called, but at the moment that's its title. And at the moment we're looking for a publisher for it. It's not published yet. But I'm confident that it will be published. Perhaps not tomorrow. But so that's the point of the book, and I think it'll be a book which I hope will be entertaining. I hope it'll give people an idea of what it's like being in the Foreign Service, and so they can help them make up their own minds about whether this is something they want to do.
Thank you very much, Sue. And so if you could please tell to us, share a little bit more of your career during Foreign Service and the highlights of your time with DFAT.
Well, it's hard because 34 years, it was all terrific, I have to say. There really wasn't one post that I didn't like. There was a great variety of posts. I mean, I started off in Portugal, and that post finished with the Portuguese Revolution, which happened just when I came back. And then that turned into, therefore, the Timor crisis. And so my work was all to do with the Timor crisis. And then they sent me off to East Germany, largely because I spoke German already, and so I went to East Germany, which was, of course, East Bloc, communist country, while the wall was still up, and so that was interesting, that was different. Looking after Australia's interests there were different from looking after them in Portugal. And then I went to the UN in New York, and I was responsible there for disarmament works and nuclear matters, the peaceful uses of outer space, and the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. And this was in the 1980s when the threat of nuclear war was very real in the world. And people were worried about the prospect of nuclear war. The Americans and the Russians were at each other's throats. It was very much the Cold War. And so those questions were questions that mattered a lot for Australia and for the Australian population. So looking after those matters at the United Nations was really serious work. And New York was a wonderful city to live in, so it was terrific. You know? So I think those were important times. Then my last post was in Fiji, and I was there. They sent me there because they said they think there's a coup about to happen, and they needed someone there, a sort of capable pair of sensible hands who could sort of look after the mission and the circumstances. And the coup did happen. It was the Spate coup. And it was a serious time. It was quite dangerous time. We had a large Australian population living and working in Fiji. And a lot of Australian businesses had business interests in Fiji. And, you know, Fiji is one of the most important countries in the South Pacific, which matters to Australia. So there was a lot of work to do there, and that was really interesting. I had bodyguards for the only time in my career, which was in itself interesting. But it was work, again, that mattered. You know, I had to make a decision about whether we evacuated the Australian community and advised them that it would be better for them to leave. And I did that. And then when it was a safe time to come back, you know, and so it was really an important time. And then we helped the government get a new constitution and to have an election and have the restoration of parliamentary democracy. And so that was interesting. And then at that time also the Pacific solution came up, with the government dreamt up this idea of how to keep asylum seekers outside Australia's borders. So I had to go and ask the leaders of Pacific Island states if they would like to host a processing centre in conjunction with Australia, and none of them wanted to do it. And it was a difficult time because a lot of Australians didn't like it as an idea. A lot of members of my staff didn't like it as an idea. So it's been contentious for a long time. But then Nauru put its hand up and said it would like to, and there were very good reasons why Nauru wanted to do it. And so that solved the problem for the moment. But of course, as we see now, the problem isn't solved. It's an ongoing issue which Australia has to face. So I've been involved in those sort of events. And then the Prime Minister of the Solomon Islands came and asked Australia if Australia would come and help sort out their civil war, which was going on. And the idea was that we would build a regional force, which then became Ramsey, which went in to help the Solomon Islands government. And I was involved in negotiating the beginnings of Ramsey. So again, that was something that you really felt was important and useful to do. So I think I've had a useful career, as well as a career that's been a lot of fun.
Wonderful. And being a woman in foreign affairs, what advices would you give to women joining the Foreign Service today?
Well, the Foreign Service today is very different from the Foreign Service I joined. In the Foreign Service I joined, there were very few women. We had no role models because there were no senior women in the department, because women had to resign on marriage. So anybody who got married had to resign. So there were not those senior women that we could model ourselves on. So that there were very few of us. In my year of 23 recruits, 2 of us were women. So you really had to forge a way for yourself in what was a very masculine man's world. It had been a man's profession forever. And many of the men resented having women working with them and didn't want to make us very welcome. Others made us quite welcome. But so we had to work to really sort of push the boundaries aside and to build a better space, which worked out to be a better working space not only for women, but for men as well, for everybody in the department. But that was quite hard, and that took quite a lot of work. And I'm proud that I've been part of that group that helped make those changes. It was a revolutionary time. And we had to do it, people are going on about this Me Too business and being molested by men and so on. Well, we all had to put up with that. And you found ways of dealing with that. Because we knew that if we were going to win, the men had to be with us. You couldn't run a battle on your own without your male colleagues. So you had to work to get them to come along with you. And so it maybe took longer, but in the end maybe it was more lasting.
Thank you. And wrapping up our interview, which would be the main advices you would give to new people joining the Foreign Service, and what do you think is the future of DFAT?
Well, DFAT has changed a lot already since I was in it. I mean, it's a much larger department now. We have many more embassies. We also have the amalgamation of the whole aid office in DFAT, so it's a different place. And modern technology has made a difference to the way diplomacy is carried out. You have instant communications now. You have aircraft, and ministers can be on your doorstep within a couple of hours. So the way diplomacy is practiced has changed. But in the end, any agreement on any topic is made between one person acting with another person, and that hasn't changed. So there's a need for people who have got good communication skills, good persuasion skills, who can analyze, who can think, who can be trusted in times of crisis. There's still a need for those people, and so I think it's still a terrific profession, and I would encourage anybody to join it. It's competitive. A lot more people apply than are chosen, so it's tough to get in, but once you're in, I think it's a terrific profession.
Well, thank you so very much. Thank you for being with us, sir.
Pleasure.
Thank you for being with us, and for more information, please visit our website www.internationalaffairs.org.au. Thank you.